Sofia Bennett had always known that her father, Charles, favored her brother David. It was one of those quiet truths in the family that was never spoken aloud, yet always present. From childhood, David had been the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong, while Sofia, despite her achievements, was always seen as secondary. But it wasn't until she had children of her own that the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Her two kids, Ava, 8 years old, and Leo, 6, were bright, curious, and full of life. Ava had a deep love for cooking, especially baking, and spent hours watching culinary shows and experimenting with flavors. Leo, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy, his enthusiasm boundless and infectious. But no matter how special they were to Sofia, her father never saw them as equal to David's children. It became most apparent during family gatherings, where David's kids were always treated like little royals, while Ava and Leo were tolerated at best, or worse, excluded. When Charles planned his grand 60th birthday party at his townhouse in Kensington, Sofia was given explicit instructions that it was a grown-ups-only event, so she arranged for a babysitter and arrived alone. She was barely through the grand entrance, taking in the chandelier-lit hall, when she spotted David arriving, with his wife Sofia and their 3 children, all dressed impeccably and carrying neatly wrapped gifts. Sofia's stomach dropped. So it wasn't a grown-ups-only party after all. It was just an event where her children weren't welcome. As her father's face lit up with joy, bending down to embrace David's kids, Sofia felt a sharp pang of betrayal. "Grandpa!" the children squealed as Charles kissed them on the forehead, his joy unmistakable. Meanwhile, Sofia stood in the doorway, invisible. It wasn't just about this party, it was the culmination of years of subtle rejection. The way Charles never made an effort to bond with Ava and Leo. How he always found a reason why David's children were easier, more manageable, more deserving of attention. Summoning her courage, Sofia approached her father as the family gathered around the extravagant dining table. "Dad," she said, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "I thought you said this was a grown-ups-only event." Charles barely glanced at her as he poured himself a glass of expensive Bordeaux, waving off her concern. "Oh, come now, Sofia," he said dismissively. "David's kids are different. They know how to behave at formal gatherings." Sofia felt her breath hitch. Different. That single word carried more weight than any insult he could have hurled at her. Before she could respond, David chuckled, adjusting his tailored blazer. "Come on, sis," he said smoothly, sipping his wine. "You know your kids can be a bit difficult. This way, we can all enjoy ourselves without any disruptions." A sharp silence followed. Difficult. The word stung. Ava and Leo weren't difficult. They were children, smart, creative, and full of life, but never difficult. Sofia clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening around her clutch. She thought of Ava, who had spent an hour perfecting a special braid in her hair for this party, just in case Grandpa changed his mind. She thought of Leo, who had asked if he could make a birthday card for Charles, only for Sofia to gently tell him that they wouldn't be attending. For years, she had made excuses for her father's behavior, telling herself that he just had old-fashioned views, that he didn't mean to hurt her children. But standing there, watching David's kids laugh as they took their seats, while hers sat at home wondering why they weren't invited, something in her snapped. Without another word, Sofia stood, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Charles asked, his voice already distracted as David's youngest climbed onto his lap. Sofia turned, her voice steady and clear. "Somewhere my children are actually wanted." As she stepped onto the chilly London streets, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over a number she hadn't called in years. Elliot Carter, once an old friend, now one of the city's most celebrated pastry chefs, Sofia took a deep breath and pressed the call button. Sometimes, when one door closes, another one opens, and she was about to walk straight through it. The cold air stung Sofia's cheeks as she stepped out of her father's grand townhouse, her heart pounding with a mixture of hurt and determination. She had spent years excusing the favoritism, pretending it wasn't as blatant as it truly was, convincing herself that Charles loved Ava and Leo in his own way. But tonight had shattered that illusion. Her children weren't just an afterthought to him. They weren't even considered. The pain of that realization settled deep in her chest. She imagined Ava at home, sitting with her notebook full of handwritten recipes, and Leo bouncing restlessly around the living room, waiting for her to come back. What would she tell them? That their grandfather simply didn't think they were well-behaved enough to be part of the family? She exhaled sharply, pushing the thought away. No, she wasn't going to let this ruin their night. If Charles and David wanted their picture-perfect family gathering, they could have it. She would create something better. Pulling out her phone, her fingers instinctively scrolled through her contacts until they landed on a name she hadn't thought about in years. Elliot Carter. Once upon a time, Elliot had been a close friend. They had gone to university together, and while Sofia had gone into marketing before eventually stepping back to raise her kids, Elliot had pursued his passion for baking with relentless dedication. Now, he was the renowned pastry chef and owner of Pâtisserie Lumière, one of London's most celebrated bakeries. She had followed his success from a distance, occasionally liking his posts on social media. But she hadn't spoken to him in years. Would he even remember her? There was only one way to find out. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before a familiar warm voice answered. Sofia Bennett. Wow, this is a surprise. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at her lips. Hi, Elliot. I know this is last minute, but I have a bit of a strange request. She quickly explained the situation, keeping her voice even, though her emotions simmered just beneath the surface. Elliot didn't hesitate. Bring them over, right now. I have an idea. For the first time that evening, Sofia felt something other than disappointment. She felt hope. As Sofia pulled up to Pâtisserie Lumière, the warm glow of the shop's interior spilled onto the quiet London street. Through the glass windows, she could see the bustling kitchen, a world of stainless steel counters, whisks in motion, and the comforting sight of Elliot Carter, dressed in his crisp chef's whites, orchestrating the evening rush. The moment she stepped inside with Ava and Leo, the tension of the evening melted away, replaced by the comforting aroma of vanilla, caramel, and freshly baked pastries. Elliot turned from the counter and grinned at them. Ah, there they are, my two newest sous chefs. Ava's eyes widened in awe at the elegant display of tarts and eclairs in the glass case. Leo, ever energetic, immediately pressed his nose to the window, mesmerized by the layers of cream and chocolate. Sofia watched as a genuine smile spread across their faces, something she hadn't seen all evening. This place is amazing, Ava whispered, clutching her notebook. I know, right? Leo added, bouncing on his toes. I want to eat everything. Elliot chuckled, gesturing for them to follow him. Well, how about instead of eating everything, you two help me make something special? Ava gasped. Really? We get to help? Elliot winked. Only if you're up for the challenge. Every great chef starts somewhere. As he led them through the glass-walled kitchen, the clatter of mixing bowls and the rhythmic hum of ovens at work filled the air. The staff, despite being busy, smiled at the children, welcoming them like they belonged. For the first time, Sofia saw her kids in a space where they weren't too much or too difficult. They were just themselves, and that was enough. Elliot guided them to a special station set up just for them, with tiny chef hats and aprons embroidered with the Pâtisserie Lumière logo. Ava's had junior pastry chef stitched in gold thread, while Leo's read Master of Mischief. "All right," Elliot announced, pulling out a tray of ingredients. "We're going to create something brand new tonight. A dessert that will have your names on it." Ava's jaw dropped. "Wait. Like, on the menu?" "That's the plan," he grinned. "But first, we need to figure out what makes the perfect dessert. Ava, I hear you know a thing or two about flavors." Ava's face lit up. "I love using herbs in desserts. I have a little herb garden at home." Elliot nodded approvingly. That's exactly how I started. Tell you what, why don't we make something using fresh herbs?" He led Ava to a small rooftop garden, where fragrant pots of rosemary, thyme, basil, and lavender thrived. Sofia watched as her daughter gently ran her fingers over the leaves, inhaling their scents, her mind already working. "Lavender," Ava decided. "It would taste amazing in shortbread." Elliot grinned. "Fantastic choice. Let's get started." Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Leo was entranced by the chocolate station. He watched as one of the pastry chefs tempered dark chocolate, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "You like chocolate, huh?" Elliot teased. Leo nodded furiously. "It's the best thing ever." "Then I think you should be in charge of the chocolate garnish." Leo gasped. "You mean I get to decorate?" Elliot ruffled his hair. "Of course. But first, I'll show you how to make the perfect chocolate curls." For the next hour, the kitchen transformed into a playground of creativity. Ava carefully measured flour and sugar, her concentration unwavering as she mixed her lavender-infused dough. Elliot coached her through the importance of balancing flavors, letting her taste and adjust the ingredients like a true chef. Leo, on the other hand, had the time of his life, learning how to drizzle melted chocolate over the pastries and perfecting his chocolate shavings technique. Sofia stood back, snapping photos of her children as they worked, not because she wanted to show off, but because for once they were truly, visibly happy. On a whim, she posted a picture to her social media with the caption, "Sometimes the best celebrations are the ones we create for ourselves." Within minutes, her phone buzzed with notifications. Friends, acquaintances, and even other parents began commenting, praising the experience and questioning why children like Ava and Leo weren't always welcomed in traditional family gatherings. Then came the message from her cousin, Julia. "Everyone at Granddad's party is talking about your post. Apparently, the only thing people are interested in tonight is your kids baking with a famous chef. Talk about karma." Sofia smirked, setting her phone down. For once, her family's exclusion didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a gift. By the end of the night, Ava and Leo had completed their masterpiece, a lavender shortbread tart, drizzled with Leo's signature chocolate curls. Elliot took a bite and closed his eyes in appreciation. "This," he declared, "is going on the menu. The Bennett tart, named after the two young chefs who created it." Eva's eyes widened in disbelief. Leo nearly fell over in excitement. Sofia wiped away a tear, overwhelmed by a new kind of emotion. Not sadness, but pride. Her children had been excluded from a table that never truly valued them, but now they had built their own. The next morning, Sofia woke up to a flurry of notifications. Her social media post had spread faster than she anticipated. Messages poured in, not just from friends, but from food bloggers, parenting communities, and even local journalists. People were captivated by the story of two kids excluded from their own family gathering who instead found joy and purpose in a world that welcomed them with open arms. Among the comments were parents sharing their own experiences, stories of children dismissed as too much or too different in traditional settings. But the real surprise came when she received a call from Elliot. "Sofia, are you sitting down?" he asked, excitement brimming in his voice. The bakery's been flooded with inquiries about kids' baking classes. I've been thinking about launching a proper academy for a while, but after last night, I say we make it official. Sofia blinked in shock. You mean like an actual program? Yes, a children's baking academy. A place where kids can learn real culinary skills, no matter their personality or learning style. He hesitated, then added, and I want Ava and Leo to be a part of it, not just as students, but as the faces of the program. Sofia felt her breath catch. Ava and Leo, the ones who had been pushed aside at family gatherings, ignored by their grandfather, were now at the center of something far bigger. By that afternoon, Patisserie Lumiere officially announced the launch of the Children's Baking Academy, featuring a photo of Ava and Leo in their little chef aprons, grinning beside their creation, the Bennett tart. The response was overwhelming. Parents signed up within minutes, and soon a waitlist was forming. The buzz reached food influencers, local magazines, and even a morning talk show, which invited Elliot to speak about the importance of inclusive culinary education for kids. And then, the inevitable happened. Sofia's phone buzzed. A message from her father. Charles, I see you and the kids have been busy. The whole family is talking about it. A second later, another notification. David. My kids are upset they weren't included. Maybe they can join the baking classes? Sofia stared at the screen. After years of being overlooked and sidelined, it wasn't until her children became the center of something successful that her father and brother suddenly wanted in. She took a deep breath, then typed out a simple response to David. The sign-up link is on the bakery's website. No special treatment. It was the same message Charles had given her for years, but this time, she was the one deciding who belonged. The first session of the Children's Baking Academy was a resounding success. The bakery bustled with the sound of tiny whisks clinking against bowls, laughter echoing through the kitchen, and the sweet aroma of vanilla and chocolate filling the air. Ava and Leo, once seen as difficult by their own family, thrived in this new space. Ava led a small group of children through the herb station, teaching them how to use fresh ingredients in their pastries, while Leo eagerly demonstrated how to make perfect chocolate shavings, delighting younger kids with his animated explanation. Sofia stood back, watching as her children not only participated but took on leadership roles. They weren't just accepted here, they were valued. Elliot walked up beside her, arms crossed with a satisfied smile. I knew they'd be naturals, he said, nodding toward Ava, who was explaining the difference between rosemary and thyme to a mesmerized group. She has a real talent for flavors. Sofia chuckled as Leo tossed a handful of cocoa powder into the air like confetti, sending a group of kids into a fit of giggles. And he has a talent for turning everything into a performance, she added. By the time the class ended, the children were covered in flour, but beaming with pride, clutching boxes of their homemade pastries to take home. Just before they left, Elliot made an announcement. I have one more surprise, he said, holding up a beautifully designed menu. In gold lettering, a new item was listed. The Bennett tart, created by our junior chefs, Ava and Leo. The bakery staff clapped, and Ava's jaw dropped. Leo let out an excited whoop. Our tart is on the real menu? Ava whispered in disbelief. Elliot winked. Of course. Every great chef deserves credit. As the customers placed their first orders of the Bennett tart, Sofia's phone buzzed again. A new message from her cousin, Julia. Your dad is fuming. Apparently everyone at his party is still talking about the bakery instead of his birthday. Serves him right. Sofia smiled. For the first time, she didn't care about her father's approval. She had built something far better. A place where her children truly belonged. A week later, Patisserie Lumiere's Children's Baking Academy had a growing wait list, and the Bennett tart was one of the best-seller desserts on the menu. Every Sunday, Ava and Leo eagerly put on their embroidered chef aprons, ready to teach, learn, and create in a space that truly appreciated them. The bakery had become more than just a kitchen. It was a place of belonging, of joy, of recognition. One morning, as they sat around the breakfast table, Ava carefully arranging her herb guide handouts for the next class, Leo practicing his chocolate piping technique on his waffles, Sofia's phone buzzed again. This time, it was her father, Charles. She glanced at the unopened message, then turned back to her children, their faces glowing with excitement as they prepared for another baking session. Instead of reading it, she reached across the table, swiping a bit of whipped cream off Leo's nose as he giggled. Whatever Charles had to say no longer mattered. Ava smiled up at her. "Mom, this is better than any party at Granddad's house." Sofia exhaled, feeling lighter than she had in years. They had built something far greater, a tradition of their own, a place where they truly belonged. The story of Sofia, Ava, and Leo teaches a powerful lesson about self-worth, belonging, and the importance of creating your own happiness instead of chasing validation from those who refuse to see your value. For years, Sofia had tried to fit her children into a family dynamic that continually excluded them, believing that one day things might change. But when she finally faced the truth that her father would never see Ava and Leo as equals, she made a choice. Instead of forcing her way into a place that didn't appreciate them, she built something better. This story highlights an essential truth. Rejection isn't always a loss. It can be redirection. Sofia's children weren't difficult or unworthy. They simply needed the right environment to flourish. When given the chance, they not only excelled, but also became role models for others like them. It's a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who truly see and support you. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is to stop seeking approval from the wrong people and start creating a space where you and those you love are truly celebrated.